Welcome into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTavCincy with a Y, or you can follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, we have our draft analysis show, and you brought on an old friend, my first time meeting him, but Solomon Wilcots, welcome to our little show.
Aaron, thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's always great to be with someone who is kind of I hold dearly. There are very few people that open doors for others in this world, and we're hanging with one of the best ones in George Vogel. There's no doubt about it. And so when he calls, man, I have to answer. I got to be there for my guy because he's always been there for me.
God, you make me feel so good, Solomon. I feel so. I mean, you're one of my favorites all time to work with, to chat with, to be in touch with. You have been gold from the day the Bengals drafted you in 1987, and I interviewed you at Spinney Field down there with all those fumes and everything else floating through down there by that mattress factory. Boy, we go back a long ways, and I appreciate you so much. And, you've been CBS, ESPN, Sunday Night Football, Sky Sports, NFL Net. Now you're lowering yourself to George in the Jungle.
No,
what you did wrong.
Hey, maybe we can, I don't know, recreate some of the magic from the Chat 5 Sports Room because we had some wonderful chats.
Oh, my God.
Our good friend Rufus, Ron Millinor, and Kent Weaver, Scott Simpson. We had such a good group. And hey, I learned a lot in those days from some really good people. And it's taken me a long way, George. So it paid off well.
Well, you worked hard at it. I mean, the people should know when you started, you wanted to learn from the ground up. You wanted to know how the sausage was made. You didn't just throw yourself on the air. You came in and worked that overnight shift editing and putting shows together. Yeah. Then you worked with my buddy Val when you started anchoring.
That's right.
Remember him?
Val was my guy. Val carried me, man.
One of on him. Don't be nice. Yeah. We had a ball back then.
Well, one of my stories from that overnight, as you probably remember, I used to come in at midnight. Right. You guys were done. You were done with the 11 o'clock show, and I think I would either sometimes I'd catch it, but most of the time you guys were leaving. I'd be coming into work from midnight till noon the next day, and I'd get in at midnight. But I remember this was one beautiful summer, and I came in. My first thing I had to do was roll and record on some of the feeds that were coming down. Remember how we used to do it back in the day?
Old school.
And it was old school, man. And then I'm putting in all these tapes, and I'm looking at the monitor, and there's people running around screaming. There's smoke billowing, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, this isn't right. So then I go on the computer, but there was no Google back then, right? It was like, and so I find out there's a bomb that went off at the Olympics in Atlanta.
Oh, jeez.
Right. So I get on the phone. I call our news director, and I think it was Bob Morford. I was like, hey, I said, I think all the guys in Atlanta are done for the day. I think they either went home or they're at the bars, one of the two, but you got to get them back. You got to get them back over there. There's going to be a lot of breaking news tonight and tomorrow morning. And you guys must have had the longest night of your life because you probably never made it to bed. But I remember I'm writing all the way through the night till morning. And, man, we were all working. Back then, you did sports, but you kind of had to do everything. And that turned into a news event in a hurry, didn't it?
Oh, and you learn fast when that stuff happens. I mean, it's sink or swim,
That's right.
When that stuff happens. Yeah, I remember coming back into that newsroom that night when that happened, and it's like, holy smokes. And there was nothing I could do. It was all on those guys in Atlanta. We had a whole thing there. That was fun. Well, we're going to talk a little draft action here with you. And you were an 8th round pick in 1987 of the Cincinnati Bengals out of Colorado. And do you remember? Now, you told me, and I don't know if you want to share this, but you told me a good story about being an 8th round pick and a Hall of Fame defensive back told you what to do when you got the training camp to make sure you caught the attention of the coach. Do you mind sharing?
No, that's quite all right. No, it was amazing because it was sort of like even the summer before I was drafted. And so I was at lunch. I worked at Sid Gilman football camp out in California. And a lot of those coaches that recruited me when I was in high school. So we're talking guys like Brian Billick, a young Sean Payton, a young John Fox, all these guys who later would end up becoming NFL coaches. They were just college coaches at San Diego State, I think at BYU, and some of the other schools as well. And but these guys ended up becoming NFL coaches. So Ronnie Lott, Marcus Allen, they're at the camp. They come out. Sid Gilman can get anybody to turn up. And so I remember Ronnie Lott, he took me and one of my high school buddies who had attended USC. He took us to lunch and then started talking about, hey, this is what you guys are going to face when you go to training camp. And, Ronnie is like military buttoned up, very serious guy. He's like a very serious guy. And he said, hey, let me tell you something. You get to training camp, don't you take nothing off nobody. He said, these veterans, man, they're going to try to just handle you. They're going to try to mistreat you. Let me tell you something right now. Don't you let one of them get away with it. He said, because they're going to test you to see if you'll put up with it. And the coaches, they ain't going to want you on your team if you let them treat you any kind of way. So you're going to have to assert yourself. And I was like, oh, Ronnie, this is coming from Ronnie Lott. And I'm thinking, well, if Ronnie says it, I got full license to be a you-know-what, right? I'm not taking nothing off anybody. And but I do recall, I remember we had one of the early scrimmages, the rookies scrimmaging. Now it's live, right? And James Brooks come busting up through there. Nobody could tackle James Brooks in the open field. He was a bad dude. So I came up, whoop, whoop, bam, tackled him, crowd goes off. It's like, and so, I'm in this 8th round pick, and this is James Brooks. The guy's an all-pro running back. He runs over everybody, stiffs on into the ground. So I remember, like that night we were going in to watch the tape, and he's walking next to me and he's looking at me. He's about this close to my face. James can be very intimidating for most people. And so I can I'm not going to give him a look because I don't, I'm trying to be the respectful rookie, and stay and know my place. And so I'm not looking at it. He just keep walking and he's right there. So I finally just kind of look like, what? He says, you closed your eyes. He said I closed my eyes when I tackled it. It was hilarious. So what do I say? I'm like, he's James Brooks. I'm not going to even get into an argument with. I told him, I said, well, I hate to see what would have happened had I kept them open. So I even got a laugh out of him with that. So I kind of cracked through the ice a little bit, just a little bit.
Pound for pound, he's probably pound for pound one of the toughest, if not the toughest Bengal ever.
Yeah.
He was not a big guy, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to be on his wrong side.
He was quick, he was fast, and he was the meanest son of a gun walking. I mean, I watched him drag, great ball players up and down the field. Remember Clay Matthews? Clay Matthews. I'm watching him just stiff arm Clay Matthews. I remember the guys from Philadelphia, Wes Hopkins and and all those defensive players for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's running all over the guys and spiking the ball in their face and talking trash to them. You know, JB was a bad dude, man. We all admired him. You know, I came into the league. I knew exactly who he was because he had started his career in San Diego with the Chargers. So, I went to high school in Riverside, California. So I knew everything about him. I just know he was a mean son of a gun, you know. But he's one of those guys that come game time, you were happy to have him on your team. But yeah, that was my early sort of training camp moment. But Paul Brown, I remember he had kind of commented on my open field tackling ability. That's when I knew if I caught the eye of the owner tackling James Brooks in the open field one-on-one, when hardly anybody could do it, I kind of knew the door was a little bit open for me.
Yeah, well, you went on to do very, very great things for the Bengals and the SWAT team and all that. I mean, my God, that's Bengals lore, man. Bengals lore. And you brought up Sid Gilman, who has a UC connection because he coached at UC back in the 50s and really had a great run at the University of Cincinnati. And I don't think a lot of people realize how big he was after he left UC, and then and he had that passing game thing. And he was kind of a grandfather of what we see today with this open offense with these NFL teams.
Everybody knows that he's the father of the modern day passing game. He was running what we call 11 personnel before everybody else. So the great LA Chargers of the AFL. And so his guys were guys that came up under him were guys like Al Davis, started out as a coach and then ended up obviously worked his way up, became an owner with the Raiders. He had worked with the LA Chargers first with Sid Gilman. Guys like Joe Gibbs. I'm talking great coaches, Al Saunders. And obviously, the Dick Vermeils and all those guys out on the West Coast, John Madden, all those guys came up on Sid Gilman. None greater than Bill Walsh, the father of, as the West Coast offense. And, all these books that I have behind me, I actually read most of them. So, the story goes that when Paul Brown left the Cleveland Browns, as you well know, Art Modell and they kind of fell out. Whether he quit or was dismissed, we leave all that to folklore. But he went and he had his respite in a place by the name of San Diego, California. In fact, that home, as I'm told by young PB Jr., they still have that house in San Diego, California. Because I was walking in La Jolla. I was walking in La Jolla, and I'm heading to the beach, and I hear somebody say, "Solomon Wilcox, what are you doing?" And I know it's PB. It's like, "What are you doing here?" So we start having a conversation. They still own the home there, but I said, "Yeah, that's the home where your granddad, Paul Brown, when he left the Cleveland Browns, he stayed in that home, and he spent a lot of his time sort of retooling, if he gets to come back into the NFL, what he would do and how he would do it." And he and Sid Gilman, and anybody who's been around Sid, they know you watch tape all day. You just watch tape. That team just keeps going back and forth. And I've been in those meetings as a youngster. I was able to be around him. And so he and Paul Brown and Sid Gilman, two of the great minds the game has ever seen, for days on end, watch tape as Paul Brown sort of planned his comeback. And so when Paul Brown gets the team in Cincinnati awarded to him, what Sid Gilman leans over to him and says, "I got an offensive coordinator who's going to be great for you." That offensive coordinator was Bill Walsh, recommended by the late great Sid Gilman. Absolutely.
I have not heard that story. Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, we'll dive into now the Bengals draft, and I know I watched you on Believe in Bengals here this past week going into the draft, and how do you think the Bengals did? We'll just Aaron, I'll turn it over to you. You run this part of it, and I'll kick back and see where you want to take it.
I was just enjoying listening to two friends catch up. I felt like an awkward third wheel, but I was still enjoying the stories.
I had not heard that Sid Gilman, Bill Walsh, Paul Brown connection. That's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
I will tell you that.
Paul probably wishes he'd turned it over to Bill instead of Tiger, but God, he was so loyal to Tiger. That's just what happened to the Bengals in what was it, 1975 or 6?
Yeah, and I'm a California guy, born and raised in California, and so I grew up like idolizing guys like Ronnie Lott, Marcus Allen, and a couple of guys because they went to USC and UCLA, Anthony Munoz and Max Montoya. So now I get drafted to the Bengals, and then while everybody else might get excited about who the quarterback is and who all the skilled play, I go cry, humbly walk across the locker room to the offensive linemen, and they anytime a defensive back come around, they look like, what the hell are you doing over here? See me and offensive linemen hanging out, and so I came over. I introduced myself to Max Montoya, who had went to UCLA, and Anthony Munoz. I grew up watching those guys. And so I said, hey, man, I just want you to know I'm just proud to be on the same team with you guys. I said, it's an honor. And I just wanted to come over and introduce myself and meet you guys. And they could not have been nice. They were like, look, anything you need, you let us know. Don't you go doing anything in this town until you come talk to us first. And look, I'm still friends with those guys all these years later. They're like big brothers, And I remember Eric Thomas and I on all of our road trips, we sat in front of Max and Anthony. And I remember coming back there, and I'm like, how the hell are you guys sitting in these seats? Like the seat is like, it's like, they're big, they're huge. And they're in this isn't first class now. And as nice as they were like, all right, just do me a favor. Don't go leaning the seat back. I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course I'm not. Of course I'm not leaning the seat back. I don't even know how you fit in there to begin with. It was torturous. When you're coming back after the game, you was on a lot of those flights with us.
Right.
You're hurting. You can barely sit. These dudes, I don't know how they're the most patient, wonderful gentlemen. Anybody who knows Max and Anthony, they are the perfect gentlemen, and they were the perfect example for what kind of pro you needed to be. Because there's no way they should have been sitting in coach. They don't even fit in the seats.
It's great.
And they never complained. I can tell you that right. They never complained.
And I got to tell you, most of those flights back, I was hurting too, but not because I was out throwing my body around. It's what I did the night before.
I know.
I am so glad you brought that up, George, because I was going to totally say that if George was hurting, it was for completely different reasons.
Hey, Aaron, they made the rest of us jealous, so jealous that most of us went into the media because of how we saw them having so much fun. Boomer, Chris Collinsworth, myself, almost every one of us, we saw these guys have so much fun. It was like, I think I'll do that job when this is all over.
Well, it's amazing how well everybody did too. But that was a great era of Bengals football with great players. And certainly this recent era has been very good for the Bengals and with great players and what we believe, no reason not to, great people. These people, it's been kind of a nice little renaissance for the Bengals here. And I think they're coming off a draft that they did very well. So, Aaron, I will kick it back to you. If you
all right,
or should we just keep talking? Because I got some other.
I'll go through some of the things that I feel that I think are very important for listeners and viewers to know about this year's draft class. Because I do believe that Duke Tobin and his staff and the scouts and all the people involved with building the team through the draft. I get to spend a lot of time with guys like Bill Polian. I've gotten a chance to spend time with guys like Ozzie Newsome. Bill Polian is a 6-time Executive of the Year award winner. Here's a guy that's built not only a champion when he was with the Indianapolis Colts, but he built a Buffalo Bills team in the 90s that went to 4 straight Super Bowls. And so he knows about team building. And I get to learn so much talking with these guys. I do a radio show on Sirius XM NFL Radio on the NFL channel 88. And look, and he talks about it all the time. You use free agency to fill your holes on the roster, and then you use the draft to sort of supplement and continue to grow your team over time. And he's saying if you're doing it right, you're not drafting for starters because you already have them. And that's how the Bengals roster is, particularly with what they did in free agency, getting Zach Moss, right, as a replacement, for Joe Mixon. Tyler Boyd, that's one that kind of had slipped by me because I was looking at the right tackle position with Jonah Williams leaving, and we all focused on this offensive line. And then when they were able to go out and sign Trent Brown, we were like, okay, this leaves us flexibility to go in a number of different directions. Even after signing Sheldon Rankins, when DJ Reader's leaving, you hate to lose DJ Reader, but a Sheldon Rankins plug, you're like, wow, I'll take that, right? A younger player filling that void. And I think we all kind of just didn't pay attention. Tyler Boyd was so good for us so many years. I remember him running off into the night at M&T Bank Stadium to send the Ravens home in the regular season finale, right? And got all that money donated to Andy Dalton's foundation for the Bill Mafia. Remember that? And that was a memorable night for Bengals fans because that's when we weren't winning a lot of games, but we started to become competitive. And then, Zach shows up, and then we get a Joe Burrow, and it just came together so quickly. And it was just really beautiful to see. And so when Tyler Boyd left, I personally just admired the way that he played, his toughness. I thought he was such a rugged, tough player. But this kid, Jermaine Burton, 3rd-round pick from Alabama, our very own TJ Hushmanzada, former Cincinnati Bengal, who trained him. Got to believe he had a conversation with someone in the building. But this guy is a stick of dynamite. He creates explosive plays, average 16 yards per reception. That's incredible. I mean, that in the NFL, we consider 15-yard pass or more as an explosive pass play. So this guy averaged over 15 yards per reception. Wow. That's unheard of. So he's got blazing speed right around low 4.4s, and he fights for the ball, contested ball. Now we love Tyler Boyd. Tyler wasn't as swift and not nearly as fast as this kid. So what we added was speed to the slot position. That's what you're going to hear a lot about teams like the Chargers. They got Ladd McConkey. This guy ran a 4.340. I was at the combine in Indy when he did it. He's going to be manning the slot for the Chargers. That's another AFC opponent, right? And then you've got the Pittsburgh Steelers who drafted Roman Wilson, the kid from the University of Michigan. He runs a 4.340, and he's going to be playing slot because a lot of these teams, they look at what the Bengals have put on the field, and I can tell you right now, particularly within the AFC North, there's a lot of envy there with the firepower that we've had here with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and then a back like Mixon, that what we call 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, but you got 1 tight end, 1 running back, which is why you get 11 personnel. But it's been hard to duplicate. But that's what teams are trying to do. They're wanting to have that kind of firepower. And I think it's going to be a hotly contested division. I think getting, Marius Mims where we did, we were lucky. Now, he hadn't played a lot, George. He's going to need some time to develop. But that's going to be up to Coach Frank Pollock to get him going. Coach Pollock, to get him going and develop him. If we can get a year to allow him to grow, I think that would be ideal. But that's what this draft really represents. We weren't drafting for starters. We were drafting for rotational players, right? Who can come in and rotate. They're going to have to play, but they don't have to come in and make huge impacts to contribute like what you would expect from any rookies. They're not going to have to lead the way and be head of the class. Just get in where you can fit in, because by the time we get through a 17-game regular season schedule, we're going to need all hands on deck.
Yeah, and you brought up the Trent Brown signing, which gives Mims time to grow, barring any injuries on that line, which was, again, I was thrilled with the Bengals offseason and what they added in free agency. I mean, but you bring up the Tyler Boyd thing and the rookie coming in. Boyd was so good on third down. He was so good at finding a way to get where he needed to be to move the sticks. And God bless Burrow for finding him, but Andy Dalton did before that. I mean, Boyd had a good third down knack. Honestly, I think Jamar Chase kind of has that a little bit. Am I crazy?
No, you're 100% right. In fact, I guess the reason why I was overlooking maybe needing to get a player in that role, because I had anticipated that maybe we should move Jamar Chase into the slot. And that's how you get a better matchup advantage. It's harder to double team to play in the slot because you can run him off motion and picks and screen him open, which I think all we need to do is get him the ball, not just more, but in a more efficient manner. Outside the numbers and down the field, that's not efficient. Check downs, rub routes, crossing routes, over routes, quick little bubble screen. Very efficient, and he's so good at creating yards after the catch. It gives him more opportunities to be what he is, an explosive player. He's built really kind of like a running back. Hard to tackle, has flashy speed, but has short area quickness where he can make people miss and move the chains or turn it into a home run. He's a big play, talented player. He's as good as maybe a receiver that the Bengals have ever had.
Now, I sound like a total Bengals sycophant here, but we talked about DJ Reader leaving, signing Sheldon Rankins, but needing a little more there, and they get these two interior defensive linemen that I think they did good. I mean, for so long, but now I talk about this too much. Those are old days, but the Bengals line suffered, but it seems like they've got it now. They usually are fairly well stocked on both lines. It hasn't been pretty all the time offensively. I think they're getting there now. But what they've done with the defensive line over the last several years and continuing to value the middle, and they did it in this draft with those two early picks.
Yeah, I was concerned even with Sheldon Rankins. I'd love to have Sheldon Rankins and DJ Reader. You lose. Reader was such a leader too. He was such a leader, such a physical, dominant player inside. He was hard to block. And last year we started to leak a little oil in our defensive run game. We were giving up a little bit up the middle, and I know Lou Anarumo wants to improve that area. And so Chris Jenkins, who they get from the University of Michigan as an interior defensive lineman. The guy is strong. He's quick. He's not a huge guy, but he's one of those. I played in Minnesota with a guy like John Randall. And our nickname for him, in the building was Little Muscle. Little Muscle. Now, Chris Doman, the late great Chris Doman, God bless his soul. I played about 4 Hall of Famers on that team.
Yeah.
And I remember Anthony Carter, AC, would come over and he would tell Chris Doman and Keith Millard and he'd tell all the guys, he said, you see that guy right there? He's going to be burning all y'all. Then he run off. Anthony Carter run. Because you would look at John Randall and he wasn't overwhelmingly big. He was kind of remind you of an Aaron Donald, right? Not overwhelmingly big, but he just outworked everybody. And you need defensive linemen like that. You don't necessarily need the biggest guy or the fastest guy. You got a motor. And look, Jackson McKinley, that's another rookie coming in. And both of those guys are young. They should provide depth for us. They should provide a rotation behind Sheldon Rankins, and BJ Hill has been phenomenal since he came.
Trade. That's one of the best trades.
I mean, yeah, he's been, and every time I see him, I can't tell him, or I can't thank him enough. It's that's not, dude, you saved us, man.
He has been so good.
Yeah. So interior linemen, if you go look at the salaries for these guys, the best one in our league, best ones, they're getting a lot of money. Chris Jones and a lot. I mean, they're just because they're so valuable, and the pressure. If you can get a pass rush defensive tackle, it's more disruptive than an end where the quarterback can kind of slide away from it or step up in the pocket. If you get pressure up the middle, you can't step up in the pocket.
Right.
There ain't no getting away from the Aaron of the world, the Jones of the world, the Jeffrey Simmons of the world, the Chris Wilkins. These guys are so disruptive, and they could crash a party when it comes to the passing game, because if you get pressure up the middle, you throw off the vision of the quarterback. They can't step up like they would want to, and now they have to evade the pass rush either to their left or to the right, and that literally cuts the field off in half. That's why Joe Burrow is perfect against pressure. He wants to climb the pocket. All the good ones want to climb the pocket because they still have vision and access to the entire field. You get pressure up the middle, if they have to escape to the right, now you just cut off half the field. They've got to escape to the left, you've cut off the other half of the field. So that's what good pass rush at the defensive tackle position can do for the Cincinnati Bengals. These guys were brought in to help stop the run, but also push the pocket to help guys like Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard get single blocking coming off the edges.
Yep.
I guess you could make an argument that 4 of your first 5 picks were high risk, high reward players. Do you have any concern at all with this type of a strategy for the Bengals in the situation that they're in roster wise?
Yeah, well, no, I don't, because where they picked, you have to hedge. I mean, if you're 18, think about it. You're in the lower half of the 32 teams picking in the first round. Like every time they go on the clock in any round, they're in the second bottom half. But you have a winning team. In the past few years, we've been even lower than that. We've been way at the bottom. And so typically you're not, it's going to be hard if you're at the bottom of the first round, it's going to be hard to get a player with a first round grade. They usually feel that low because I'm talking to general managers, they say in the first round, you typically have maybe 20 players that have a first round grade on them. Okay. And then you're still picking at the bottom of the first round, and now you got to take a player with a second round grade. So Mims he would have gone even higher to be I've been that he's been one of the highest rated tackles on the board. If he had a greater sample size of plays, he only started 8 games in his career. When he did play, he played well. That's what they'll tell you. The tape was good. The story is, and I'm not going to pretend to know more about him than I do, because I think we should give the young man the respect of getting to know him, not pretending that we already do. But came from a small town. You get to a big time school, and you have to adjust to a lot of that. And you go to Georgia, that's big time football now. And now, so we should thank Georgia. They got him ready for this. But that there's still some going and developing. But he's got all the tools. He's got good feet. If you talk to Anthony Munoz, I'm sure he'll tell you, a big guy at 6'7" who can move like that. That's all you want. Like, we can't teach how to be big. We can't teach him. He comes with that. He's already a physical player. I saw him on tape blocking downfield. He can run. He can move. He's agile. To be 6'7", 340, it's incredible. And so now the technique and fundamentals to really kind of become that polished player that you need to be, we've got really good offensive line coach. We've got players in our lineage who come back, whether you're Willie Anderson or an Anthony Munoz, and they work with players at that position. They can teach them. And we ought to give them access to these young men. And because it all helps. You and I both know, whether you're a coach or whether you're a guy who's a Hall of Famer like Anthony Munoz, why wouldn't you go to him and say, hey, can you help me? Hey, Witt did it, but he had to get out to L.A. to play for the Rams so he could talk to Anthony Munoz. So apparently he wasn't allowed to do that when he was with the team.
Well, that blows my mind. But in that same vein, and you mentioned earlier about DJ Hushmanzada working with the young man from Alabama,
Burton,
the wide receiver,
Burton,
Jermaine Burton,
Jermaine Burton. I mean, I knew DJ when he came in as a rookie. He was a guy who had to fight to make a roster. Actually, the first couple of years, and he had some injuries, and he was hanging by a thread, and he turned himself into one of the best wide receivers the Bengals have had. He had a 3-4 year jump there where he caught so many balls, and I trust that guy to know if this dude can keep his head on straight and do it. And you remember he came in with Chad, and it was like it almost felt like TJ was kind of like, I'm probably wrong on this, but it felt like TJ was kind of
and not only kind of that, and Chad, hey man, Chad, first of all, we all love Chad because Chad brings an energy like no other.
but
hey, can you imagine learning the playbook as a rookie, trying to learn your job and having to handle Chad? That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. Exactly. But tells you about TJ. And look, I remember Marvin's first year was 2003. And you remember I finished my career in Pittsburgh, and Marvin was our linebacker coach there.
Yeah.
So I had known Marvin, and in those days in 2003, I was already working at CBS, but I was still around the team a lot, as you well know. And so Marvin gets the job, and I said, there was two guys. No, there was like two guys. I said, Marvin, I'm lobbying. I'm like, this dude, TJ Hushmanzada, don't cut him. Don't cut him, Marvin. He's good. He's going to be good. I was like, he's going to be good. Don't. He was like, well, he's hurt all the time. I was like, forget about that. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. I'm like, I feel like I'm his agent. So now I go to TJ. I'm like, hey, man, don't get hurt. Whatever you do. It's like, you don't need somebody telling you that. Like, I already know that. Of course. I told him, I said, man, you are good. I love TJ because his football IQ is phenomenal. His work ethic was phenomenal. And that guy was a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the greatest 7th round picks Cincinnati Bengals ever had in Bengals history. I mean, it ain't even close. This dude, and he did help Chad in a lot of those complicated. Remember, Coach Bratkowski was the offensive coordinator then, and Chad and TJ helped him get lined up. Man, he was part of Chad's success, and those two remain very, very close to this day. And to Chad's credit, he appreciates everything TJ did. TJ, it makes sense that he would be training young men to get ready to play in the NFL. Because and I understand he worked with T. Higgins too and helped T. Higgins get ready coming into the National Football League. And look, TJ is a wonderful teacher. He's a brilliant young man when it comes to knowing the game of football and knowing how to read coverages and how to break off routes against coverages and sight adjustments. The dude is, I'm telling you now, he's that guy. And you know this, a lot of these teams would come in here when we had Chris Henry out there and you had Chad Johnson out there, TJ in the middle, slot receiver. People don't realize the slot receiver has to be so adjusted. It's so dialed in to what the quarterback is doing because a lot of your hot reads and your blitz reads, and he's blocking in the run game. man, EJ was a worker. He could do everything you needed a receiver to do and then some within the offense. So I was elated when I heard that that he had worked with and trained and worked out Burton. And I got to believe it's one of the reasons why the Bengals could take that fight. You talked to Aaron about taking some risk, whatever. I think to be a good team builder as a general manager and to be a good head coach that's going to win, you've got to be able to take some risks. And you've got to be able to know how the culture that you built here, and I think Zach Taylor's built a phenomenal culture. Phenomenal culture. These players are very mature. They're very close. They have great leadership skills amongst themselves in terms of the way they hold one another accountable. I think it can absorb, right, a few people who deserve the opportunity to prove that they deserve to be here. And as long as you have that, I think you're doing good.
In that vein, I'm pretty shocked it's worked out this way with Zach and what he's done. And I don't want to shortchange him. He coached at UC, young guy, didn't have head coaching experience, was out in LA with the Rams and comes in and talks the talk, has that terrible first season. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm so happy for him because he stayed the course. I remember first time I talked to him, I'm like, you a class, are you a glass half full or half empty? He's like, I'm the most eternal optimist you're ever going to meet. He's right. He is. He was. I can see it coming. I can see it. I'm like, I don't see anything coming but more losses. That dude was. I'm surprised that he got it to where he did, and as quickly as he did it.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, I'm kind of shocked that he was able to do what he did in that amount of time and get it from here to there. And I'm not saying I don't want to cut on Marvin before him, but things were kind of like meandering a little bit. And man, and then it fell off the cliff his first season. But I don't know. I'm surprised it worked out this way. Are you?
In some ways, but no. I'm be honest with you. I remembered him when he was a player. So having played at the University of Colorado, of course, our number one rival was Nebraska, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. You remember, Big Dave Remington, Jim Scow, and all. Yeah. I played against all those guys when I was in college, and they were older than me. I remember looking across the way, and there was Roger Craig, there was Mike Rozier, there was Irving Fryer. There was all these great Nebraska Cornhusker players who ended up in the NFL. I mean, they were a pro team, and we were a college team, but they were a pro team. And the great Tom Osborne. So I grew up in that division, in that conference, in Oklahoma State. I played against the Oklahoma State teams when Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas were there. I had to tackle those. I mean, it was. I'm telling you now. So I had an appreciation for players who had played in that conference, and he was, he was Conference Player of the Year as a quarterback. And then when I read about his dad had played for some great Oklahoma teams, and played on national championship teams. And, and Press Taylor read about his brother. I know he had worked in Philadelphia and now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He comes from a football family. And, being around coaches pretty much my whole life and having time with Sid Gilman for about 2-3 years while I was in high school and then college, and going to those camps every year and meeting all these great coaches, and then seeing how coaches evolve and the people who truly love the game. When you love it like that, you're going to learn more rapidly. And then if you're raised in it like he was, and then you were a quarterback, look, man, that guy, he knows this game and he knows it very well. And he learned from some really good coaches. When I went out and I had spoke to a Miami Dolphins team at the time, Joe Philbin was the head coach, and Zach Taylor was on that staff, and so I remember some of those guys. I went in and spoke to all the players, did some media training with the players, and but I knew his lineage. I just knew where he came from, and that's kind of what I trust. I know Mike Sherman. That's his father-in-law. Mike Sherman was a great coach in this league. He coached the Green Bay Packers. He had coached at Texas A&M, and that's that's when he hired Zach. Zach kind of got his first opportunities, and this guy works hard, and he's done well with it. And I remember when they drafted Joe Burrow, and I remember asking him. I said, when you were a college quarterback, and think about it, you come into this league as a rookie. How would you want to be coached? What would you want? How would you want that coach to empower you to go out and play and be the leader day one? Because you knew Joe was going to play day one, first overall pick. We're at the bottom. We couldn't go anywhere but up. You get the first overall pick, you're at the bottom. We're not fooling anybody here, right? So and I already knew the answers that I had expected. I wasn't testing him. I just wanted to see. And we just talked about. He was like, "Oh no, we're giving him everything. We're doing it." What he's saying is basically that's what I would want someone to do if I was the quarterback, because he played the position. I would want to be fully empowered to run all my protections. Tell me what you want to do. Tell me what plays you like. Oh, I like shotgun. All right, we're running shotgun. Whatever it is Joe Burrow will do, that's what we're doing. And then I'm going to look at the tape to see what he did so well at LSU when he ran the table, won 15 straight in a championship, right? It was one of the greatest college football seasons I have ever seen from one player. And George, I watched every game. I couldn't walk away from the television set. I was working at the time doing some work for PFF. So I had the database, and I'm all in the database. Look, have we ever seen anybody do this? We have this guy every week. He answered the bell against a very tough opponent. As the opponents got tougher each week, he got better. And then so I'm calling all my guys, Eric Thomas. I'm calling all the old Bengal players. I said, if we keep losing, and this kid keeps playing. I think he's going to be our quarterback next year. I got my fingers crossed, George. I'm like, I'm telling the family I'm like, hey, you got to come watch this guy. You got to watch this Joe Burrow guy. He's lighting it up. And I said, I remembered him because, we did a lot of high school football at Channel 5. I love the high school football in Cincinnati and, in the state of Ohio. And so I got to watch him, his senior year in high school. And so I remembered him. I had almost forgotten about him because Ohio State didn't use him. They never played him. And so when I saw him in 2018 playing for LSU, and then I anticipated watching him the next year in 2019, his senior year, he came out like gangbusters, man. He hadn't looked back since, And when he gave that Heisman speech, I said, "Oh man, this is the real deal."
It's funny you say that. I was doing the same thing watching him early in that season, knowing the Bengals probably would have the first pick in the draft. Yeah. So I'm watching this dude. I'm like, this is probably going to be the guy. And impressive doesn't even begin to describe it. But getting back to Zach Taylor, one last comment I have is I don't think I've ever seen a coach as nice as Zach Taylor is all the damn time. I mean, you know how it is. Like most coaches, sometimes you're like, you don't want to make him, and I know he probably breaks a blackboard here and there or punches, but my God, he's so respectful of everybody. I've heard him ask questions where Bill Belichick would have bit their head off and spit it out like Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a bat. But he just respects everything, and that makes me like him so much more.
Yeah, look, I hope I just want our fans to know what a special person we have as a head football coach here, and that he really does set a great example for the city and for those young players and for the organization. And I got maybe real quick, I'll tell a couple of quick stories. The night I was at the stadium the night that Damar Hamlin was injured, and we thought we were going to lose him. And I was like, I got to get out of here. You know, I was up. We did the Roar of the Jungle stuff, King of the Jungle stuff. I'm up in the box up right next to Mike Brown, and we had in our box, we had a friend of mine. He's a doctor, and he had the binoculars, and so we're just like, I got to get out of here. So I didn't think the game was going to continue. I didn't even know if it should have. Then as I came home, I was working. My phone was ringing. I'm checking with a lot of people. We're getting the reports that are coming in, how things were handled. And I remember just sending a text over to Zach saying, you are such a phenomenal leader. Like, that does not come with a textbook on how to behave and how to handle those moments. And then the way that the league we really got the short end of the stick when it came to, we looked like we were going to win that game. And then we had already beaten Kansas City, and all of a sudden Kansas City get the number 1 seed. It's like, we don't. I'm just thinking somehow this does not work for us. We took the high road, did the right thing.
Correct.
But yet it didn't work out right for us. But Zach set such a wonderful example. He didn't complain. And see, people don't understand. Leadership is about doing and saying the right things at the most inopportune moment. And he took the high road, but he kept this energy for his players. And he didn't let everybody else see that he was seething from within, but he turned that energy into players. You remember how they took the field in Buffalo? Buffalo had to pay for it, right? They had to pay for it. Because, boy, look, we came a whisker away. We don't hit Pat Mahomes out of bounds. That game's going in overtime. We're going to win. I'm telling you, we're getting ready to win. It's up, but that's coaching. That's managing people. But it was a crisis, and he put the care for Damar Hamlin over and above, and he wanted to win that game. We're gonna win it. For sure. We came out smoke. I told him, I said, you had him ready to play, coach. We came out smoking that night. And then this incident happened that no one can predict. He acted heroically. He could have. And look, the other coach, Sean McDermott, had already said, "I'm going to the hospital to be with my player." Yeah. Look, he could have said, Coach Taylor could have said, "Well, we want to play, and if you're not going to play, you're going to forfeit, and I'm taking the win." That's not what Zach did. Zach took the high road, man. He put the kid, Damar Hamlin, over and above what was a very important game for him to win. Very important. Coaches' careers are decided on wins and losses like that. He didn't even think twice about it. He did what was right, even though it didn't maybe work out for him in the end. But it told me a lot about him, And I attended an award. It was a Father's Day when they were sort of honoring him as a dad, and they see and hear his wife talk about him the way that he is. You know how much time that job requires of you. And he's got to be there on call for every single one of his players. All coaches are. He's got to be there on call for the team and the organization. If something happens, he's the guy. He's the point man. It's his team. But he's a wonderful husband and father. And I remember going over to him after the ceremony. I talked with his dad, and he gave a great speech. And I just told him, I said, how lucky we are to have you. And I looked at his dad and I said, you did a wonderful job with this kid. he just did a wonderful job. And I wasn't selling anything. It just needed to be said. And so I've had the opportunity, not a lot, but just a few real brief moments to show you what his character is really like. And it's the real deal. And that's why he was able to turn this thing around so quickly. When
amazing.
When you carry yourself that way, you're willing to be that kind of person. You'd be surprised what you could get done.
Yeah, he's not phony. I mean, he is the
right.
real
That's right.
deal.
He's the real deal.
I swear to God, if he saw someone trying to fix a flat tire on the side of the road, he pulls over and helps them. He's unbelievable.
Right. He's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I couldn't be more happy for him, to be honest with you. I've seen him offer up patience with certain situations that I don't know how he did it, because I couldn't have done. I was like, this dude's he's really special, because I'd be like, no, that but he has a good balance, I think, of really being firm now. He's firm. He ain't a pushover. He ain't a pushover. I've seen that.
He has some tough conversations that we don't know about.
Yes.
I think he tells those guys one-on-one, this is where you better improve. There's a guy coming after it. I believe in you, and you can get it done, but you got to get this done. I can't do it. I think he has those conversations, but yeah, it's amazing. We said we'd keep you a half hour, and we probably kept you over. So I owe you some. I owe you some gift certificates or something.
Now, I will say one more thing about one of the players, because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Eric Hall, right? From Fairfield High School.
Yes.
High School.
Fairfield High. Yeah, I agree. Yes.
And look, when I saw that pick, and I'm just going to tell you, the entire football community did go to Michigan initially, then transferred to Iowa. But I can't speak enough about the players that play football at Iowa. They are across this league. You hear that they are some of the most prepared players to play at the NFL level. Think about any of the offensive linemen that we've ever drafted out of there. Do you think about any of the players that it's become tight end you, right?
Yeah.
Because Kittle's out of there, T.J. Hawkinson out of there, Sam Laporta just came out of there last year. Now we get Eric Hall. I'll tell you about Eric Hall. I have a friend of mine. He's a tight end coach, longtime tight end coach in the league. Every year, I always call and ask him, okay, how do you have the tight ends ranked in this year's class? Every year I call him because he's my go-to guy. He's the tight end guru. Put it like this. He drafted George Kittle, told Kittle, if I ever catch you running out of bounds, you're out of here. And that's how Kittle ended up setting a record for the most yards receiving in a single season by any tight end. And he said it. And then I think later that day, or maybe the next year, I think Travis Kelce ended up breaking it. But he has yards after the catch. And so he told me, he gave me his list this year. Brock Bowers first. Second, Eric All, and then I think it was the kid Stinnett was third. The Bears took him. Fourth, Tanner McLaughlin. We got two of the top four tight ends on the board in this year's draft, according to a really, really good source. So that tells you how well we did, and hats off once again to Duke Tobin.
Yeah, I think if All stays healthy, that's been the only bugaboo. Is the health got me.
Yeah, got to stay healthy. That's why. Look, you got to stay healthy. He's
due for a good run of health.
Yeah, we're due. So let's all say our prayers now, cross our fingers, and
for sure.
And go Bengals, baby, go Bengals.
Well, next time you're on, Solomon, I'll be sure to have like 15 questions at the ready. So whenever George talks, I'm trying to beat him out the gate.
Well, you can ask one right now.
Yeah, get one.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll make it easy. You're getting out of here. If you had to put a grade, because the Bengals kind of cheated, they cherry picked their way on Bengals.com with how they graded this.
Oh yeah, they only took the good grades from the various.
They only put good grades.
I've been hanging out with, and Bill said that Susie Colbert, Bill Polia said that Susie Colbert calls him Buzzkill Bill. You know, because he has pounded it into my head. That's stupid. Nobody give draft grades. You don't know how the draft is until 3 years down the road. You tell me who signed a second contract with the team that drafted him. I'll tell you he had a successful draft. He starts giving me. He's right. He's right. And so I will listen. I'm never gonna let him catch me giving a draft grade with a letter. Right. I said, no, I'm not doing it. So I'm not. But as you can tell, I do like this draft class. I mean, I feel it's fruitful. I think it's going to be fruitful for us because the expectations that they all come in. I think Jermaine Burton is different. I think they expect him to be a starter. Now, Charlie Jones may have something different to say, right? But I do think Burton is such a talent. And I think it gives us something that maybe we didn't have before. That's exceptional speed at the slot receiver to go along with Higgins and Chase. That's going to be, I think they're going to want to start him. Everyone else, I think there's going to be a ramp-up period before they're asked to come in and be a difference maker. Give us a lot of credit for getting Geno Stone. Give us a lot of credit for bringing back Von Bell, because I think they probably would have had to draft a safety, right? So they took care of a lot of things in free agency, which meant they were able to sort of calibrate what their whole purpose was for the draft. I think they would tell you. Sometimes they'll tell you they're always looking for versatility in players. But I think this year they truly were looking for depth. They were looking for guys who could come in, fit in a rotation and play and contribute, but not have to play all 65 snaps on either side of the ball, coming in at least that first month or two as a rookie.
I got a Jermaine question.
Well, with Jermaine Burton, would you rather line up on Jermaine Burton, Jamar Chase, or T. Higgins? Who would you rather be on the other side of?
I'm taking the rookie. That's easy. Hey man, look, T. Higgins. You could be in his hip pocket. He'll post you up like a power forward, man. He don't care. He calls him an 80-20 ball, not 50-50. He coming down with it. And I think he's kind of shown us that. Jamar Chase, nobody cover. I'm just telling you right. If you don't double cover him, he's going to beat you. Nobody covering Jamar Chase. Nobody. And look, Jalen Ramsey, he was a rookie going up against Jalen Ramsey in that Super Bowl. He's still running by Jalen Ramsey for the game-winning touchdown, last I checked. Every time I put the tape on, he's running right by him. And Jalen Ramsey is one of our best corners in this league. And he couldn't do anything with Jamar Chase. So nobody else even had a shot. So no, we're pretty good there. We're pretty set. And look, at 60, I'll be 60 in October, guys. I know I don't look it, but I'll be 60 in October. I'm not trying to cover anybody right about now.
We've kept you wait too long. I'm sorry. I so appreciate this, Solomon. But one last thing, I wanted to bring up the Von Bell reacquisition, because I think that is a big deal, maybe a bigger deal than it's gotten any headlines or any of that. People don't talk about it much. I think it's a big deal to the team. I don't know what he has left in the tank, but I don't doubt that guy. I'm sure there's plenty there. But this may move Dax Hill into a cornerback role. What do you think of that?
Look, I think Dax is a versatile player. I think the way he played at Michigan was really good training for our league. And I think that versatility, sometimes you can be a jack of all trade, master of none. I think he's a good player. I think he can be a nickel. I think he can be a dime. I do think he can play safety. I want to see. I don't know about the outside corner. I need to see more. But inside in that spot, whether it's on the weak side of the formation, which typically you're the dime defender covering the tight end opposite of the two receiver side, that's going to be for Mike Hilton as the nickel. Now, I don't want to see Mike leave this team, but if he's going into the last year of his contract, and I think we should do everything we can to keep him. You know, I'll say that first, but maybe there's a future for him at a nickel dime position, which is in our league today. That's a starting role.
Yeah.
So, you know, because we start the game with 3 corners on the field now, because all these other offenses are playing that 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers. So there's a place for Dax Hill in this defense. He just needs to be more consistent. He needs to improve upon his what we call pursuit angles, take better angles to the ball. He can do that. These things I'm mentioning is not something that I'm questioning whether he could do it. It's just about consistency. When you become a starter in this league, you get more volume of plays. And he had a smaller sample size as a rookie and did well. And when they increased the volume, that's where you had some inconsistency. He still made some good plays and had some plays maybe you would love to see him improve at. And now coming into year 3, he's got to prove that he can handle a greater volume of plays within a game week in and week out and become more consistent.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. I'm so sorry we kept you this long. I didn't plan on that. But I feel like I'm back at 9th and Elm in the basement with no windows. And we're down there with Rufus and Scott and Dream and the boys just talking sports, man.
You know, you got to know, I have a family. I'm just glad they like me because, you know, they're hanging out my door. I have an office here. They're hanging out. When are you coming out? You know, they want me to have dinner. When it's time to have dinner, I got to have dinner with them. And then when it's time for movie time or play time or whatever, I got to be there or it ain't happening. And then I get that look, you know what I mean? So, I'm just glad they like hanging out with me at this stage, George.
I hear that. Thank you so much, Solomon. It's been great catching up with you. And, oh, my God, the stories. We could do this all night, but we won't.
We'll make it happen again sometime. So just give me a call, okay?
Okay. I am sorry we went so long, but I appreciate every minute of it.
It's all right. I enjoyed every minute. All the best to you guys. Hooday, go Bengals.
There we go. All right, Solomon. Thank you very much. How about that, Aaron? You didn't expect all that, did you?
No, sure didn't. All right. Well, that wraps up our time with Solomon Wilcots. What an interview. That was fun.
Oh, he's delightful, as you know. I mean, you can tell. Class act from start to finish. I could go on all night talking about that dude and the fun we've had and just class act.
Well,
obviously well informed too. He knows. He doesn't just know where the bodies are buried. He knows who put the bodies there. Like he's got connections. I mean, when he started talking about that whole Sid Gilman thing and being involved with those guys back when he was a high school and a college player, and it's crazy the depth. And you know how it is. A business like that, it's kind of like the broadcast business where I always called it, for lack of a better term, incestual, because everybody just is so tightly knit. It's a tight-knit business. And even though there's scads of football players and scads of coaches, they all go to these clinics. They all work. If they didn't work for someone, they know somebody who did, and they can get the drop on this person. And that's how the business I was in. If we had somebody coming in from San Antonio to be a reporter, I could probably call someone and find out what this dude's all about. And if I couldn't, somebody else in my tight circle would know somebody. It's crazy. And the football game is that way. And Solomon's right in the middle of that. I mean, you know, as a player, as a broadcaster, he's just, and he's so damn likable. Everybody talks to him. And he's very trustworthy.
Well, those are all key attributes that you need to be in that business and make it for as long as he has at that level that he's been at. So
yeah, still successful at it. And God bless him. He's in a position where he can pick and choose and do what he wants. I didn't ask him about Sky Sports, though. I wanted to ask him about living in, I'll ask him another time. Living in London and doing the NFL and just that weird dynamic of, I mean, it's, it's just kind of interesting that he was over there. I want to say at least 2 seasons, maybe more. I remember when he first got that gig, he's like, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm going to be in London for it was like 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I can't remember of the season. And they used different guys, but he's done it all. He has done it all. And sharp as a tack.
Well, that puts us at an hour 10. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to the draft, but outside of the draft, I think we'll probably just wait until next week to get back to the regularly scheduled program. But
hopefully the refs have a good week.
Well, it depends on what Ellie and Nick Lodolo are able to do because they've been on fire. But
holy smokes, that reminds me. Okay, question for you. Given my Frankie Montas bet, should I make one on Lodolo or just take one for the team and not make it?
So I think that you should probably, if you have somebody like even your son who you trust with your money, have them place the bet for you. I don't think you're allowed to actually place the bet.
That's a good answer.
I think it's a loophole.
That helps me because I was about to do that and I thought of it and I'm like, because let's face it, Nick had some problems and just got back, and I don't want those to flare up. And I guarantee you, if I make the bet, but I'm telling you, at this point, that dude's going to be in the conversation. If he keeps this up much longer, he's in the conversation.
I think that's our loop. That's our loophole. Maybe you even tell Ash like, hey, maybe you place the bet, maybe you don't. Don't ever tell me until we get to the end of the season if you actually placed it or not. But that way you don't even know if you actually placed the bet or not. So maybe that's how you have to go about this.
No, I like that plan. That's what I'm going to do. I'm guilt-free now.
There you go.
All right.
Well, with that all said, again, special thanks to Solomon Wilcots for joining us for his hour plus and taking that time away from his family to join our ridiculousness here on George in the Jungle. But for George Vogel and Remington Tavern, again, you can find them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour, 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m., Instagram at Remy Tav Cincy, or follow them on Facebook. I am Aaron Smith, and we will catch you next week, 9 o'clock p.m. on Tuesday.